Beloved, this is not just another Monday. This is a divine appointment with destiny. It is Monday, 2 March 2026, dears, and we are stepping into this day with boldness, authority. Today's atomic prayer is not passive. It is not timid. It is not reactionary. It is a strategic, prophetic declaration. Okomi and oy. Istiblis diamonionenu. You were not created to negotiate with chaos. You were not anointed to coexist with confusion. You were commissioned to take dominion. From the very beginning, heaven's blueprint over your life was rulership, influence, governance, and authority. This is the hour where you stop asking permission from fear, from doubt, from limitation, and begin speaking as one who understands covenant rights. When you open your mouth in prayer today, you are not begging, you are legislating. You are enforcing what heaven has already decreed concerning your family, your finances, your health, your ministry, and your future. Territory is not just land. Territory is atmosphere. Territory is influence. Territory is every space your name enters and every environment your presence touches. And today, we refuse to allow negativity to dominate our atmosphere. We refuse to allow lack to sit on the throne of our finances. We refuse to allow intimidation to silence our voice. This is the day we rise in spiritual intelligence and command alignment. We speak to every disorder and we declare divine order. We speak to every delay and we declare acceleration. We speak to every resistance and we declare supernatural compliance. There is a sound in the spirit when a believer understands authority. It shifts rooms, it unsettles opposition, it activates angelic assistance. Today, as we release this atomic prayer, we are not whispering, we are declaring, we are not hoping, we are establishing, we are not reacting, we are advancing. Every step you take today must be backed by revelation. I have dominion. I carry power. I walk in divine jurisdiction. This Monday is the launching pad of strategic victory. You are setting the tone for the entire week. What you permit today will attempt to remain. What you confront today will be uprooted. What you decree today will echo into tomorrow. So we stand firm. We stand fearless. We stand fortified by faith. We command our territory spiritually, mentally, financially, relationally, and we establish dominion now. Get ready. Position your heart. Align your words. Engage your authority. Because when we pray today, systems shift, atmospheres respond, and territories submit. This is your moment to rise and rule. Let's pray. Identity before authority is the foundation of every victorious life. You cannot command what you do not believe you are authorized to command. You cannot take territory while secretly questioning whether you belong there. Before dominion is exercised outwardly, it must be established inwardly. Authority is not first a volume issue, it is a revelation issue. When you know who you are, your voice carries weight. When you understand whose you are, your posture changes. You stop shrinking in environments that were meant to respond to your presence. You stop apologizing for occupying space that heaven assigned to you. Many people attempt to function in authority without clarity of identity. They try to speak boldly while inwardly wrestling with insecurity. They try to lead while battling comparison. They attempt to command outcomes while doubting their worth. But identity is the anchor of confidence. Identity is the root system that keeps you steady when winds of opposition blow. If your identity is fragile, your authority will fluctuate. If your identity is rooted in divine truth, your authority will remain stable even when circumstances are unstable. When you recognize that you were designed intentionally, crafted strategically, and positioned purposefully, you stop negotiating with fear. You understand that you are not random. You are not accidental. You are not an afterthought. You are the result of divine intentionality. That awareness shifts your internal dialogue. Instead of asking, am I enough? You begin declaring, I am equipped. Instead of wondering, do I belong here? You affirm, I was assigned here. Identity produces certainty, and certainty fuels authority. Authority flows from relationship. When you know whose you are, you recognize the backing behind your voice. A badge carries power not because of the metal it is made of, but because of the government it represents. In the same way, your authority is effective because of the kingdom you represent. You are not operating independently. You are functioning under divine jurisdiction. When that revelation settles in your spirit, timidity dissolves. You begin to speak with conviction because you understand you are not speaking alone. You are echoing a higher mandate. Identity also protects you from illegitimate battles. When you are unsure of who you are, you fight to prove yourself. You engage in unnecessary comparisons. You compete in arenas you were never assigned to dominate. But when identity is secure, you operate from purpose rather than pressure. You do not need applause to validate you. You do not need opposition to define you. You move strategically because you are anchored internally. Authority without identity seeks validation. Authority with identity enforces transformation. Your identity determines your tolerance level. If you see yourself as powerless, you will tolerate dysfunction. If you see yourself as an authority, you will confront it. People who lack identity allow circumstances to dictate their emotional climate. They allow opinions to shape their self-perception. They allow temporary setbacks to redefine their future. But when identity is established, you become less reactive and more intentional. You understand that your position is not determined by public perception, but by divine declaration. There is a difference between self-confidence and identity rooted in divine truth. Self-confidence fluctuates based on performance. Identity remains steady regardless of performance. When identity is performance-based, failure becomes devastating. But when identity is purpose-based, failure becomes instructional. You learn without losing yourself. You grow without questioning your worth. You adjust strategy without abandoning assignment. That stability makes your authority sustainable. Identity also influences how you interpret resistance. If you do not know who you are, resistance feels like rejection. It feels personal. It feels like evidence that you are unqualified. But when identity is secure, resistance becomes confirmation that you are advancing into significant territory. You understand that opposition often surfaces when impact is imminent. You refuse to internalize every obstacle as a personal deficiency. Instead, you discern strategically and respond intentionally. Before you command territory externally, you must command the narratives internally. The voice within you must align with the truth about you. You cannot speak dominion over your environment while allowing self-doubt to dominate your thoughts. The internal conversation must shift from limitation to empowerment. You must silence every internal accusation that contradicts your assignment. Identity requires renewal of perspective. It requires you to reject labels that were placed on you by past failures, broken relationships, or critical voices. Identity clarifies boundaries. When you know who you are, you also know what you are not. You stop trying to fulfill roles that were never assigned to you. You stop absorbing responsibilities that belong to others. You become focused rather than scattered. Authority thrives in clarity. Confusion weakens command. When you are certain of your identity, your decisions become sharper. Your yes becomes intentional. Your no becomes firm. Your movements become deliberate rather than reactive. Identity shapes posture. Authority is not always loud. Sometimes it is calm, steady, unwavering presence. When you know who you are, you do not need to dominate conversations to demonstrate influence. Your composure communicates confidence. Your restraint demonstrates control. Your discernment reflects maturity. Identity eliminates the need for constant self-promotion. You understand that position is secured by purpose, not by performance theatrics. Every territory you are called to influence requires you to show up fully aware of your value, whether in your family, your workplace, your ministry, or your community. Your impact is directly connected to your self-perception. If you diminish yourself, you diminish your influence. If you question your authority, others will question it as well. Identity sets the standard for how you expect to be treated and how you choose to operate. It establishes the baseline of your expectations. Identity before authority also means healing before ruling. Unresolved wounds distort leadership. Internal brokenness can cause you to misuse authority. When identity is fractured, authority becomes controlling rather than empowering. But when identity is whole, authority becomes restorative. You lead to build, not to dominate. You command to create order, not to instill fear. Wholeness refines authority into something constructive and transformative. When identity is solidified, courage becomes natural. You no longer hesitate at doors that were designed for you to enter. You stop shrinking in the presence of opportunity. You begin to take decisive action because you trust the foundation within you. Authority then becomes an extension of identity rather than a performance to maintain. You operate from overflow, not insecurity. You move with clarity, not confusion. You speak with assurance, not apology. You command your territory not because you are trying to become someone, but because you already understand who you are. Atmosphere management is the discipline of taking responsibility for the spiritual and emotional climate that surrounds you before it dictates your outcomes. Every environment carries a tone, a frequency, a narrative. Rooms speak, conversations release energy, thoughts generate climates. If you are not intentional about managing the atmosphere around you, you will unconsciously submit to it. And whatever atmosphere you consistently tolerate will eventually shape your decisions, your mood, your confidence, and your results. Many people are waiting for circumstances to change before they change their attitude. They are waiting for people to shift before they adjust their posture. They are waiting for confirmation before they release conviction. But those who understand atmosphere management recognize that influence flows from within outward. You do not wait for the climate to improve, you become the climate carrier. You do not adapt to negativity, you disrupt it. You do not absorb anxiety, you release stability. Authority over territory begins with authority over atmosphere. Atmosphere is invisible, yet it is powerful. You can walk into a room and feel tension without anyone speaking a word. You can sense unity or division without formal introduction. That unseen layer determines how conversations unfold and how decisions are made. If the atmosphere is heavy with doubt, creativity struggles to breathe. If the atmosphere is saturated with fear, bold ideas retreat. If the atmosphere is governed by offense, collaboration collapses. Managing atmosphere means recognizing that what is unseen often controls what becomes seen. Your words are one of the primary tools of atmosphere management. Speech does not only communicate information, it releases tone. Words can escalate conflict or establish calm. They can amplify chaos or introduce clarity. When you speak with intention, you are setting the emotional temperature of your environment. Complaints lower it, gratitude stabilizes it, faith elevates it, authority aligns it. The disciplined speaker understands that language is not neutral, it is creative. Thought life also contributes to atmosphere. The climate around you is often a reflection of the climate within you. If your internal dialogue is saturated with doubt, you will carry hesitation into every interaction. If your mind is rehearsing failure, your posture will reflect insecurity. But when your thoughts are aligned with possibility and purpose, your presence becomes steady. Managing atmosphere requires mental vigilance. You cannot allow every external opinion to take residence in your internal world. You must filter what you entertain. Emotional regulation is another dimension of atmosphere management. Emotions are not weaknesses, but unmanaged emotions can destabilize environments. If frustration is left unchecked, it spreads. If offense is nurtured, it infects conversations. Leaders who lack emotional awareness create unpredictable climates. People walk on eggshells, uncertain of what mood they will encounter. But when you are self-aware and disciplined, your steadiness becomes contagious. Consistency builds trust. Stability invites productivity. Atmosphere management also requires discernment. Not every environment is yours to transform, but every environment requires your awareness. There are moments to confront and moments to withdraw. There are times to speak boldly and times to observe quietly. Wisdom recognizes whether the atmosphere requires correction, reinforcement, or departure. Authority is not reckless. It is strategic. It evaluates before it acts. It senses before it responds. Boundaries protect atmosphere. If you allow toxic conversations to dominate your time, they will shape your mindset. If you repeatedly expose yourself to environments filled with gossip, cynicism, or constant negativity, your own tone will shift subtly over time. Atmosphere management sometimes means limiting access. It means curating conversations. It means being selective about influences. Protection is not isolation, it is preservation of clarity. Physical space also influences atmosphere. Order invites focus. Clutter can breed distraction. Light shifts mood, sound influences energy. The environments you inhabit daily should reflect intentionality. When you organize your space, you signal readiness. When you create calm surroundings, you reinforce stability. Even small adjustments can recalibrate mental and emotional clarity. Managing atmosphere includes practical stewardship. Another aspect of atmosphere management is expectation. What you anticipate often becomes the lens through which you interpret events. If you expect conflict, you will detect it even where it is minimal. If you anticipate opportunity, you will notice doors others overlook. Expectation subtly shapes atmosphere because it influences perception. Managing your expectations requires aligning them with vision rather than fear. Conflict resolution plays a critical role. Unresolved tension lingers in the atmosphere long after conversations end. Silence does not eliminate conflict. It often intensifies it beneath the surface. When issues are addressed with maturity and clarity, the atmosphere clears. Avoidance creates emotional fog. Direct communication restores oxygen to relationships. Those who manage atmosphere understand that peace is cultivated, not accidental. Gratitude is a powerful atmospheric regulator. It shifts focus from deficiency to provision. In environments where gratitude is practiced consistently, resilience increases. People collaborate more effectively. Creativity expands. Gratitude interrupts entitlement and replaces it with awareness. Even in challenging situations, gratitude stabilizes perspective. It does not deny reality, it reframes it. Atmosphere management also involves guarding against internalization of external chaos. You may encounter environments that are unstable, competitive, or critical. But you do not have to mirror that instability. You can enter with composure and leave with clarity. Your internal climate does not have to reflect every external storm. This requires intentional detachment from drama and disciplined focus on purpose. Leadership is deeply connected to atmosphere. Whether in a family, workplace, or community, the tone set by those in authority influences everyone present. If leaders panic, anxiety spreads. If leaders remain calm, confidence increases. If leaders react impulsively, confusion multiplies. If leaders respond thoughtfully, order emerges. Authority over territory requires consistent atmospheric awareness. Spiritual awareness deepens this discipline. Environments are influenced not only by visible interactions, but also by unseen forces such as fear, doubt, pride, or unity. Discernment allows you to recognize subtle shifts before they escalate. It enables proactive adjustment rather than reactive repair. When you sense heaviness, you introduce hope. When you detect division, you promote understanding. When you perceive discouragement, you release encouragement. Ultimately, atmosphere management is about ownership. You stop blaming surroundings for your stagnation. You stop surrendering your peace to unpredictable conditions. You take responsibility for the climate you cultivate. You understand that while you cannot control every external factor, you can control your response, your words, your focus, and your boundaries. And when you consistently steward the atmosphere around you with intention and authority, you create environments where clarity thrives, growth accelerates, and dominion becomes sustainable. Legislative prayer is the posture of approaching prayer as one who enforces divine will rather than one who pleads from a place of defeat. It is the understanding that prayer is not merely emotional expression, but spiritual governance. When you pray legislatively, you are not attempting to persuade heaven to be kind. You are aligning earth with what heaven has already authorized. You are not negotiating with fear. You are issuing decrees that dismantle it. This mindset shifts the entire tone of your spiritual life from desperation to dominion. Many approach prayer as a last resort, something to try after every other option has failed. That posture subtly reinforces powerlessness. But legislative prayer begins with awareness of authority. It recognizes that access has already been granted. It understands that alignment precedes manifestation. Instead of begging for change, you begin declaring order. Instead of focusing on the size of the problem, you focus on the certainty of divine backing. The difference is not volume, but confidence. Legislation establishes standards. It defines boundaries. It clarifies what is permissible and what is not. When you pray legislatively, you are setting spiritual boundaries around your life, your family, your territory. You are declaring what can operate and what must leave. You are not reacting emotionally to every disturbance. You are establishing non-negotiable principles. This kind of prayer carries clarity. It is intentional and specific rather than vague and uncertain. Desperation-centered prayer often magnifies problems. It repeats them. It rehearses them. It circles them repeatedly without shifting perspective. Legislative prayer acknowledges reality, but refuses to be dominated by it. It speaks to the situation rather than about the situation. It calls disorder into alignment. It commands confusion to resolve. It announces peace into turbulence. It enforces what is righteous, just and aligned with divine design. Confidence in legislative prayer is rooted in relationship and revelation. You cannot legislate what you do not understand. Knowledge of divine principles sharpens your declarations. When you know the promises connected to provision, you speak differently in seasons of financial strain. When you understand principles of restoration, you address broken relationships differently. When you are grounded in truth, your prayer language shifts from uncertainty to precision. Tone matters in legislative prayer. It is firm but not arrogant. It is bold but not reckless. It is grounded in conviction rather than ego. Arrogance attempts to control outcomes for self-glorification. Legislative authority seeks alignment with divine intent. The focus is not personal gain but established order. This keeps the heart aligned and motives purified. Authority divorced from humility becomes manipulation. Authority rooted in alignment becomes transformative. Legislative prayer also requires discipline of thought. You cannot decree alignment while entertaining internal chaos. Your mind must be governed before your mouth speaks governance. If doubt dominates your internal narrative, your declarations will lack conviction. Mental renewal strengthens spiritual authority. When you consistently feed your mind truth, your words carry weight because they are anchored in belief rather than wishful thinking. Specificity increases effectiveness. Vague requests produce vague expectations. But when you articulate clear declarations, you set defined targets. Instead of saying, "I hope things improve," you declare, "I establish clarity in this decision." Instead of saying, "I wish this tension would go away," you state, "I command peace and resolution into this relationship." Precision reduces ambiguity. It sharpens focus. It aligns expectation with intention. Legislative prayer is proactive rather than reactive. You do not wait for crisis before establishing boundaries. You declare stability before instability arises. You reinforce protection before vulnerability is exposed. This posture prevents many disruptions from gaining momentum. It is easier to maintain order than to restore it after prolonged chaos. Proactive governance strengthens territory. Consistency sustains legislative impact. One bold declaration followed by days of doubt weakens momentum. Authority grows stronger with repetition and alignment. When your daily words reinforce the same truth, you create spiritual continuity. Inconsistency produces mixed signals. Consistency establishes authority as a lifestyle rather than an occasional event. The more aligned your speech becomes with truth, the more natural legislative prayer feels. Legislative prayer also involves responsibility. If you declare peace, you must practice peacemaking. If you establish integrity, you must embody it. Words unsupported by action lose credibility. Authority flows most powerfully when lifestyle aligns with declaration. You cannot legislate discipline while living in disorder. Alignment between speech and behavior strengthens impact. Silence can also be legislative. Choosing not to entertain accusations, gossip, or fear is itself a decree. Refusing to repeat negativity is an act of governance. Sometimes authority is demonstrated by what you refuse to echo. Restraint can reinforce boundaries just as effectively as vocal declaration. Discernment determines when to speak and when to withhold. Opposition does not invalidate legislative prayer. Resistance often intensifies when boundaries are reinforced. Just as laws are tested, spiritual decrees may encounter challenges. This does not mean authority is ineffective. It means enforcement must remain steady. You do not abandon conviction because of initial pushback. You remain anchored, reinforcing truth until alignment manifests. Community strengthens legislative authority. When agreement aligns with conviction, momentum increases. Shared declarations create unified atmosphere. Isolation can weaken resolve, but alignment amplifies impact. Surrounding yourself with voices that reinforce truth rather than contradict it fortifies your own declarations. Collective clarity accelerates manifestation. Gratitude complements legislative prayer. While you establish what must change, you also acknowledge what is already working. Appreciation prevents your focus from narrowing solely to problems. It balances authority with awareness of provision. Gratitude stabilizes heart posture while declarations establish direction. Legislative prayer transforms self-perception. The more you practice speaking with authority, the more your identity aligns with governance rather than passivity. You begin to see yourself as an active participant in shaping your environment rather than a victim of circumstance. This internal shift influences decisions, relationships, and confidence. Ultimately, legislative prayer is about alignment, clarity, and consistent enforcement of divine order within your sphere of influence. It calls you to rise above emotional pleading and step into strategic declaration. It challenges you to speak with conviction rooted in revelation. It invites you to approach every situation not from a position of helplessness, but from awareness of authority, reinforcing boundaries, clarifying expectations, and establishing order. Wherever disorder attempts to settle, strategic confrontation is the disciplined decision to address what threatens your peace, your purpose, and your progress before it becomes deeply rooted. What you ignore does not disappear, it often multiplies. What you tolerate without evaluation gradually defines the boundaries of your life. If you refuse to confront dysfunction today, you silently give it permission to remain tomorrow. Strategic confrontation is not about aggression, it is about alignment. It is not emotional reaction, it is intentional correction. Many people avoid confrontation because they associate it with conflict, discomfort, or rejection. They prefer temporary peace over lasting order. But unaddressed issues create internal tension. Silence may feel easier in the moment, yet it builds pressure beneath the surface. Strategic confrontation recognizes that delayed conversations often become more complicated over time. What could have been resolved with clarity becomes entangled with resentment. What could have been corrected early becomes normalized. Confrontation begins with awareness. You cannot address what you refuse to acknowledge. Discernment allows you to identify patterns before they solidify into cycles. It helps you distinguish between minor irritations and significant threats to your alignment. Not everything requires confrontation, but what consistently disrupts your focus or violates your values demands evaluation. Wisdom determines priority. Impulse reacts to everything. Strategy responds selectively. Timing is critical. Confrontation delivered prematurely can escalate tension unnecessarily. Delayed confrontation can allow damage to deepen. Strategic confrontation requires emotional regulation and thoughtful preparation. You approach the issue when clarity is stronger than frustration. You speak when your intention is correction, not retaliation. Tone influences outcome. A calm, steady voice often accomplishes more than loud intensity. Internal confrontation is just as important as external confrontation. Before you address others, you must address yourself. Unchecked habits, limiting beliefs, procrastination, and self-sabotage require honest evaluation. If you refuse to confront internal inconsistencies, external victories will feel unstable. Self-awareness strengthens credibility. When you hold yourself accountable, your external confrontations carry authenticity rather than hypocrisy. Strategic confrontation also protects boundaries. If you allow repeated violations without response, you unintentionally communicate acceptance. People often treat you according to the standards you enforce. When you articulate boundaries clearly and consistently, you create predictable expectations. Boundaries are not walls of isolation, they are markers of self-respect. Confrontation reinforces those markers. Fear of rejection often silences necessary conversations. You may worry that addressing an issue will damage a relationship, but unaddressed tension erodes connection gradually. Honest communication, even when uncomfortable, preserves integrity. Relationships grounded in transparency withstand correction. Those that cannot endure truth may not have been stable to begin with. Strategic confrontation clarifies the strength of connections. In professional environments, avoiding confrontation can compromise growth. Performance issues ignored today affect collective results tomorrow. Feedback withheld out of discomfort deprives others of opportunity to improve. Constructive confrontation communicates investment. It signals belief in potential. Delivered with clarity and respect, it fosters development rather than defensiveness. Strategic confrontation requires clear objectives. You must know what outcome you desire before you begin the conversation. Is the goal understanding, correction resolution, or boundary reinforcement? Clarity prevents emotional drift. Without defined intention, discussions can spiral into unrelated grievances. Focused confrontation addresses the core issue rather than accumulating minor complaints. Listening is an essential component. Confrontation is not a monologue, it is dialogue. When you allow others to express perspective, you gather insight that may refine your approach. Strategic confrontation does not assume complete knowledge. It remains open to clarification while standing firm on principles. Balance between firmness and openness increases effectiveness. Emotional discipline safeguards confrontation from becoming personal attack. The goal is resolution, not humiliation. When ego enters the conversation, progress stalls. Strategic confrontation separates behavior from identity. It addresses actions without labeling character. This distinction maintains dignity while reinforcing accountability. Avoiding confrontation often leads to passive aggression. Instead of direct communication, frustration leaks through sarcasm, withdrawal, or subtle hostility. These indirect expressions create confusion. Strategic confrontation eliminates ambiguity. It replaces hints with clarity. It removes guesswork and establishes transparent expectations. Courage grows through practice. The more you confront with intention and respect, the more confident you become in your ability to handle difficult conversations. Each successful resolution reinforces your capacity to maintain order. Avoidance weakens confidence, engagement strengthens it. Over time, confrontation becomes less intimidating because you recognize its value. Strategic confrontation also involves discernment about what not to confront. Some issues are distractions, some comments are projections. Some conflicts are invitations into unnecessary drama. Wisdom evaluates whether engagement will produce meaningful progress or merely consume energy. Not every criticism requires response. Not every disagreement requires debate. Strength includes selective silence. Self-control prevents escalation. Even when confronted with hostility, your response determines direction. Reactive confrontation amplifies conflict. Measured confrontation stabilizes it. You are responsible for your tone, your language, and your composure. Emotional steadiness shifts dynamics. It signals maturity and authority. Forgiveness may accompany confrontation. Addressing an issue does not require holding grudges. You can correct and release simultaneously. Forgiveness frees your internal space while confrontation restores external clarity. Together, they maintain peace without sacrificing standards. Strategic confrontation protects future potential. By addressing issues early, you prevent cumulative damage. You preserve energy that would otherwise be consumed by unresolved tension. You reinforce integrity within your environment. Each intentional conversation strengthens the structure of your territory. Ultimately, what you confront and address today will not control your tomorrow. Ignored dysfunction gains momentum. Addressed dysfunction loses power. Strategic confrontation is an act of stewardship over your life, your relationships, and your purpose. It reflects maturity, clarity, and commitment to alignment when you choose courage over avoidance, precision over reaction, and resolution over resentment. You reshape the trajectory of your environment and secure the integrity of your future movement. Alignment with heaven's blueprint begins with the understanding that there is an original design for your life that predates circumstances, opinions, and setbacks. You are not navigating randomly. There is an intentional pattern, a divine architecture, a strategic layout that defines your purpose and your territory. When you align with that blueprint, you stop striving to manufacture outcomes and begin cooperating with design. Alignment is not about forcing doors open. It is about recognizing which doors were constructed with your name on them. Disorder often arises when you attempt to build outside of design. Effort without alignment produces exhaustion. Activity without clarity produces frustration. You can be busy yet misaligned. You can achieve milestones yet feel disconnected. Alignment brings internal confirmation. It produces peace even when progress is gradual. It steadies you because you sense that your movements are synchronized with a larger plan. Heaven's blueprint is revealed through conviction, values, and consistent direction rather than impulse. Impulse shifts with emotion. Blueprint remains steady through seasons. When you are aligned, your decisions reflect long-term vision rather than short-term pressure. You evaluate opportunities based on purpose rather than popularity. You decline what distracts even if it appears attractive. Alignment sharpens discernment. Order flows from blueprint. When design is respected, structure strengthens. When structure strengthens, stability increases. Many areas of life remain chaotic because the underlying design has not been acknowledged. You attempt to manage symptoms instead of addressing foundation. Alignment requires stepping back and evaluating whether your current path reflects your core calling. It requires honesty about misdirection. Alignment also demands surrender of personal agendas that contradict higher design. There are ambitions that appear impressive but do not resonate with your assignment. There are pursuits that generate applause but drain purpose. When you realign with blueprint, you release what no longer fits. Letting go can feel uncomfortable, yet it creates space for authenticity. Authenticity sustains momentum. Consistency becomes easier in alignment. When actions correspond with design, motivation is internal rather than forced. You no longer need constant external validation because you are anchored in clarity. Discipline feels purposeful instead of burdensome. Even challenges carry meaning because they contribute to construction rather than distraction. Alignment affects relationships. Connections that resonate with blueprint amplify growth. Those that conflict with design create friction. This does not require severing every challenging relationship, but it does require awareness of influence. You cannot consistently partner with voices that contradict your direction and expect clarity to remain intact. Alignment sometimes requires adjusting proximity. Heaven's blueprint includes timing. Impatience can distort alignment. Attempting to accelerate beyond preparation creates instability. Conversely, hesitation can delay manifestation. Discernment balances urgency with readiness. When you trust the design, you respect process. You build foundations before expecting elevation. You value preparation as much as presentation. Clarity of values is central to alignment. Values function as internal compasses. They guide decisions when options multiply. If your values are undefined, you will drift toward convenience. But when they are clear, they anchor you. They prevent compromise under pressure. Alignment requires regular evaluation of whether your actions reflect your declared principles. Alignment with blueprint also brings refinement. Design is precise. Excess elements weaken structure. In the same way, distractions weaken focus. Simplification strengthens effectiveness. You remove what does not contribute to your calling. You streamline commitments. You focus energy where it produces greatest impact. Refinement is not loss, it is strengthening. When misalignment is identified, correction requires humility. Pride resists adjustment, it defends outdated directions. But humility allows recalibration. Recognizing that you veered from design does not diminish you, it empowers you to return. Realignment is an act of strength. It acknowledges that clarity matters more than ego. Alignment influences emotional stability. When you operate within blueprint, comparison loses its grip. You stop measuring your progress against paths that were never assigned to you. You celebrate others without feeling threatened because you understand differentiation. Your territory is distinct, your timing is unique. Blueprint eliminates unnecessary competition. Decision-making becomes clearer in alignment. Instead of weighing every option equally, you filter them through purpose. Does this opportunity build or distract? Does this relationship strengthen or confuse? Does this commitment align or compromise? Blueprint provides criteria. Criteria reduce confusion. Resistance may surface during alignment. When you shift toward design, habits formed in misalignment may resist change. Comfort zones protest growth. External voices may question adjustment, yet alignment requires resilience. You remain steady even when others misunderstand. Confidence rooted in clarity withstands temporary opposition. Alignment also produces order in thought patterns. You replace narratives of scarcity with awareness of provision. You exchange confusion for focus. You stop rehearsing past mistakes and begin envisioning future structure. Mental order influences practical order. Your schedule reflects priorities. Your environment reflects intention. Spiritual awareness deepens alignment. Reflection, meditation, and disciplined listening sharpens sensitivity to direction. Noise competes for attention. Alignment requires quiet spaces where conviction can surface. You must create room for insight. Distraction clouds blueprint recognition. Alignment is ongoing rather than singular. Life transitions require recalibration. What aligned in one season may require adjustment in another. Remaining attentive prevents stagnation. You continually evaluate whether your steps reflect current direction. Growth refines calling without abandoning core identity. When you align with heaven's blueprint, authority flows naturally. You do not strive to dominate. You establish order because you are positioned correctly. Influence expands without manipulation. Opportunities connect without excessive pursuit. Your presence carries clarity because it is anchored in design. Alignment becomes the foundation from which dominion operates, ensuring that what you build is sustainable, intentional, and reflective of divine architecture woven into your life from the beginning. Daily enforcement of dominion is the discipline of exercising authority consistently rather than occasionally. Authority that is acknowledged but not practiced becomes dormant. It exists in theory but not in manifestation. Dominion is not a single declaration made once in intensity. It is a posture maintained through repetition, awareness, and intentional action. What you enforce daily becomes culture. What you neglect daily becomes vulnerability. Many people experience moments of empowerment yet fail to sustain them. They speak boldly in one season and retreat in another. They establish boundaries once and then allow gradual erosion. Daily enforcement prevents erosion. It reinforces standards. It reminds your environment that order is not optional. Consistency communicates seriousness. When your response to disorder is predictable and steady, chaos loses its confidence. Dominion begins in the morning before external influences compete for your attention. The way you set your internal tone determines how you respond to external pressures. If you begin the day reactive, you will spend the day recovering. If you begin intentional, you will spend the day directing. Daily enforcement requires conscious preparation. You choose your mindset before circumstances attempt to choose it for you. Small decisions shape dominion. It is not only the major confrontations that define authority, it is the minor disciplines, choosing focus over distraction, integrity over convenience, clarity over avoidance. These repeated choices build structure. Dominion is cumulative. Each aligned action reinforces identity. Each compromised action weakens momentum. The ordinary moments are where authority is strengthened or diluted. Emotional consistency is part of enforcement. If your standards fluctuate based on mood, your environment becomes unstable. People and circumstances respond to patterns. When your responses are governed by principle rather than impulse, predictability creates stability. Stability strengthens influence. You become known for steadiness rather than volatility. Daily enforcement also requires awareness of subtle drift. Rarely does disorder appear suddenly at full intensity. It often begins with minor allowances. A small compromise in schedule becomes chronic procrastination. A slight tolerance of disrespect becomes normalized behavior. A minor neglect of discipline becomes habitual inconsistency. Vigilance detects drift early. Correction at early stages prevents larger restoration efforts later. Language must align daily with dominion. Casual negativity can undermine authority. Repeated statements of limitation weaken confidence. Even humor that reinforces defeat shapes perception. Words spoken consistently carve mental pathways. If you rehearse victory, resilience strengthens. If you rehearse doubt, hesitation increases. Daily verbal discipline reinforces authority internally and externally. Habits serve as enforcement mechanisms. Structured routines anchor focus. Consistent review of goals sustains direction. Reflection prevents unconscious regression. When habits support vision, enforcement becomes natural rather than forced. Structure protects momentum. Without structure, intention dissipates. Relationships influence daily dominion. Surrounding yourself with voices that affirm purpose reinforces consistency. Constant exposure to cynicism erodes conviction. Alignment in community strengthens accountability. When others reinforce your standards, enforcement becomes collaborative rather than solitary. Influence multiplies when shared. Rest is also part of dominion. Exhaustion weakens resolve. Fatigue lowers resistance to compromise. Sustainable authority requires balance. You cannot enforce clarity if your mind is clouded. You cannot maintain discipline if your energy is depleted. Intentional renewal preserves strength. Dominion is not driven by burnout. It is sustained by rhythm. Self-correction must occur without delay. When you recognize inconsistency, address it immediately. Avoid rationalizing minor deviations. Acknowledgement without adjustment leads to repetition. Ownership accelerates restoration. Each time you recalibrate quickly, you reinforce commitment to standards. Vision review strengthens enforcement. When purpose remains visible, discipline feels meaningful. If vision fades, routines feel mechanical. Regular reflection on assignment renews motivation. Dominion thrives where direction is clear. Without vision, enforcement becomes empty repetition. Resistance may intensify when dominion becomes consistent. Environments accustomed to your previous passivity may test your new standards. Expect adjustment periods. Remain steady through initial pushback. Persistence communicates permanence. Over time, resistance diminishes when it recognizes stability. Personal integrity anchors daily dominion. Public declarations unsupported by private discipline erode credibility. Alignment between private habits and public statements strengthens influence. Integrity ensures that authority is authentic rather than performative. Authenticity sustains long-term impact. Gratitude reinforces enforcement by reminding you of progress. Acknowledging growth strengthens confidence. Recognizing improvement prevents discouragement during slow seasons. Dominion is not perfection, it is persistence. Each day of alignment contributes to cumulative transformation. Boundaries require daily awareness. It is not enough to set them once. Situations evolve, expectations shift. Periodic reinforcement maintains clarity. Revisiting boundaries prevents silent violations. Clear communication sustains respect. Mental renewal is a daily necessity. External input competes constantly for influence. Without intentional filtration, distraction infiltrates focus. Reading, reflection, and disciplined thought recalibrate perception. Authority flows from a mind that is clear and anchored. Dominion must extend across areas of life rather than remain compartmentalized. Financial discipline, relational clarity, emotional maturity, and professional excellence all reflect enforcement. Inconsistency in one area can undermine strength in another. Holistic awareness strengthens overall stability. Daily enforcement transforms identity. As you consistently exercise authority, confidence deepens. What once felt forced becomes natural. Decisions become quicker because standards are internalized. You no longer debate every boundary. You operate from established principles. Momentum compounds over time. Small daily victories accumulate into significant shifts. Consistency produces credibility with yourself. Trust in your own discipline strengthens resolve. You become less reactive and more directive. Each day becomes an opportunity to reaffirm alignment, reinforce boundaries, and exercise intentional authority so that dominion remains active, visible, and effective in every sphere you influence. Beloved, this is the day the Lord has made, and we step into it with holy intention and divine awareness. Welcome to this prophetic threshold, the entrance into March 2026. This is not just another Sunday on the calendar. It is a spiritual gateway, a moment of divine transition, a crossing into new jurisdiction. Today marks more than the beginning of a new month. It marks the release of a fresh mantle and the awakening of new authority over your life. You are not entering this month casually. You are entering it commissioned. You are stepping into March with oil on your head, fire in your spirit, and clarity in your assignment. This is your Adomix Pui air EFRS man L NEW Mo and TH NEW. Something is shifting in the atmosphere around you. The old weight is lifting. The old limitations are breaking. The ceilings that once restricted you are being dismantled by divine decree. When God releases a fresh mantle, he does not refurbish the old season. He ushers you into a new dimension. A mantle represents responsibility, rank, and access. It signifies trust from heaven. It means you have graduated from one level of spiritual capacity into another. And this month, March 2026, will not respond to who you used to be. It will respond to the authority you now carry. There are mantles for survival, but this month carries a mantle for dominion. There are mantles for endurance, but this month carries a mantle for execution and manifestation. Heaven is declaring that your preparation season has positioned you for promotion. The battles that once intimidated you will now bow before the authority resting on your life. The doors that resisted you will recognize your voice. The systems that ignored you will have to acknowledge your presence. This is not arrogance. It is alignment. It is not ego. It is empowerment. You are not stepping into March begging for breakthroughs. You are stepping in legislating outcomes. You are not praying from desperation. You are praying from dominion. You are partnering with heaven to see divine will established in every area of your life. There is a fresh mantle over your mind, bringing clarity and strategic intelligence. There is a fresh mantle over your mouth, sharpening your declarations and aligning your words with power. There is a fresh mantle over your hands, increasing productivity and accelerating results. There is a fresh mantle over your steps, ordering them with divine precision. Everything about this month reflects a shift in authority. What you tolerated before, you will terminate. What delayed you before, you will dismantle. What distracted you before, you will dominate. March 2026 will not define you. You will define it through your obedience, your faith, and your decrees. So steady your spirit, align your heart, lift your expectation. Because this is not routine prayer. This is activation. This is not repetition. This is transfer. A fresh mantle is falling. A new month has begun, and you are stepping into new authority. March 2026 is not merely a change of date. It is a prophetic crossing, a divine threshold, a spiritual transition into higher jurisdiction and divine authorization. There are moments in time that are chronological, and then there are moments that are kairos, divinely orchestrated intersections where heaven and earth converge to announce a shift. This is that kind of moment. You are not just stepping into another month. You are stepping into a new realm of responsibility, influence, and spiritual rank. Something in the spirit has recalibrated, and you have been summoned to rise accordingly. A crossing always demands movement. It requires leaving one dimension to enter another. You cannot carry the limitations of yesterday into the authority of today. The mindset that sustained you in the previous season cannot define you in this one. When God initiates a prophetic crossing, he dismantles old frameworks, disrupts comfortable routines, and challenges internal narratives that kept you confined. March 2026 announces that you have crossed over from containment into expansion, from restriction into release, from obscurity into visibility. Higher jurisdiction means expanded influence. It means what once overwhelmed you will now respond to you. It means circumstances that dictated your emotions will now bow to your decrees. Authority is not noise, it is alignment. It is the confidence that comes from knowing you have been authorized by heaven to operate in a specific sphere. And when authorization shifts, outcomes shift. The same environment that resisted you in a lower dimension will cooperate with you in a higher one. There is a divine restructuring taking place. The spiritual atmosphere around you is adjusting to the weight of your new mantle. What felt heavy before will feel manageable now. What seemed impossible before will begin to reveal pathways. A prophetic crossing alters perception. It sharpens discernment. It increases sensitivity to divine instruction. You begin to see differently because you are standing in a different place. Elevation changes vision. This crossing also demands courage. You cannot step into higher jurisdiction while negotiating with fear. Fear is the language of limitation, but authority speaks the language of conviction. When you understand that you are divinely authorized, hesitation loses its grip. You stop asking whether you are qualified and begin declaring that you are appointed. You stop shrinking to fit environments that were too small for your calling and start expanding to occupy the space heaven designed for you. Divine authorization means you are no longer functioning on borrowed confidence. You are not operating on the approval of people or the validation of systems. You are moving under heavenly endorsement. And when heaven endorses you, opposition becomes confirmation. Resistance becomes evidence that you have crossed into territory that matters. The intensity of warfare often reflects the significance of the assignment. This month is not about surviving battles. It is about exercising jurisdiction within them. A prophetic crossing redefines identity. It confronts the internal narratives that kept you small. It silences the voices that whispered inadequacy. It dismantles agreements with doubt. You begin to understand that your authority is not self-generated. It is divinely conferred. You have been entrusted with influence because you have been prepared through process. The trials of previous seasons were not punishments. They were training grounds. The pressure you endured was shaping capacity for this very moment. Higher jurisdiction also means greater responsibility. Authority is not entitlement. It is stewardship. When you step into a new dimension, you must manage your words, your thoughts, and your actions with heightened awareness. Your declarations carry weight. Your decisions create ripple effects. Your obedience accelerates alignment. This crossing requires intentionality. It requires discipline. It requires a commitment to operate from principle rather than impulse. March 2026 signals a shift from reactive living to strategic movement. You are no longer responding emotionally to circumstances. You are responding prophetically. You are not chasing opportunities. You are discerning assignments. There is clarity being released over your priorities. Distractions that once consumed your energy will lose their appeal. When jurisdiction increases, focus intensifies. You become selective with your time, protective of your peace, and deliberate with your commitments. This crossing also involves separation. Not everyone can accompany you into higher territory. Some relationships were seasonal. Some conversations were temporary. Some environments were stepping stones. As you ascend, alignment becomes essential. You will feel a holy discomfort in spaces that no longer reflect your calling. That discomfort is not rejection, it is redirection. It is evidence that your spiritual coordinates have shifted. Divine authorization reshapes how you pray. You move from pleading to proclaiming. You move from asking timidly to declaring boldly. Prayer becomes legislation rather than negotiation. You understand that you have access to spiritual resources that were previously unfamiliar. Your language changes because your awareness changes. You speak with conviction because you know you are standing in a place of delegated authority. There is also an internal crossing taking place. It is not only external promotion, it is internal transformation. Old insecurities are being confronted. Old patterns are being dismantled. You are learning to trust the voice of God within you more than the noise around you. This inner shift is what sustains the outer elevation. Without internal alignment, external authority becomes unstable. But this month, there is stability being established in your spirit. Higher jurisdiction requires spiritual maturity. It demands emotional intelligence. It calls for restraint in moments of provocation. When you know you are authorized, you do not need to prove yourself. You do not engage in unnecessary battles. You can serve your energy for assignments that matter. You understand that not every invitation deserves your response. Authority teaches you to discern when to speak and when to remain silent. This prophetic crossing is also about territory. There are areas of your life that have been unclaimed. Dreams deferred, visions postponed, goals delayed. March 2026 is calling you to reclaim them. Authority gives you the confidence to revisit what you once abandoned. It empowers you to confront what you once avoided. It strengthens you to occupy spaces that once intimidated you. You are not crossing alone. Heaven has already prepared the path. Divine provision accompanies divine assignment. Resources, connections, strategies, and insights are aligning behind the scenes. What seemed delayed was being orchestrated. What felt like stagnation was strategic positioning. Now the timing has shifted, and you are stepping into synchronization with divine purpose. This is a season of intentional elevation. You are being invited to think higher, speak stronger, and act bolder. The crossing is not symbolic, it is functional. It affects how you lead, how you build, how you respond, how you dream. It challenges you to expand your capacity and embrace the weight of new responsibility. It invites you to trust that the same God who prepared you will sustain you. March 2026 is announcing that you have crossed into higher jurisdiction. You have stepped into divine authorization. The boundaries that once confined you are dissolving. The limitations that once defined you are losing power. The narrative of your life is shifting from restriction to reign, from waiting to walking, from preparation to execution. God is releasing a fresh mantle, new oil. expanded responsibility, and elevated rank for this season. A mantle is never merely symbolic, it is functional. It represents the tangible weight of divine trust resting upon an individual. When a mantle is released, it signifies that heaven has assessed your preparation and determined that you are ready for more. More influence, more impact, more accountability, more visible authority. The oil that once sustained you in a previous dimension is no longer sufficient for where you are being called to function now. Fresh oil implies renewal. It means you are not operating on yesterday's anointing or last season's revelation. There is a replenishing taking place in your spirit. Where there was fatigue, strength is emerging. Where there was confusion, clarity is settling in. Where there was hesitation, boldness is rising. The fresh mantle brings with it a recalibration of identity. You are not who you were in the last chapter. The trials, the stretching, the refinement, they were all pressing you for oil. And oil is produced through pressure. Expanded responsibility accompanies expanded oil. The fresh mantle does not arrive to make life easier. It arrives to make you stronger. It calls you to steward influence with integrity. It invites you to carry vision with discipline. When rank increases, expectations increase. You cannot approach this season casually. You cannot speak carelessly. You cannot lead impulsively. The mantle demands maturity. It demands consistency. It demands alignment between your character and your calling. Elevated rank in the spirit is not about status. It is about assignment. It is about being trusted with territories that require wisdom and discernment. There are conversations you will now enter that you once observed from a distance. There are decisions you will now make that once intimidated you. The mantle shifts your posture. You no longer shrink in rooms where you once felt small. You stand with quiet confidence, aware that you are there by divine appointment. A fresh mantle also signifies transition. It marks the end of one function and the beginning of another. You cannot carry an old mindset into a new rank. The thinking that sustained you as a learner must evolve when you are positioned as a leader. The prayers you prayed in desperation must mature into declarations rooted in authority. The mantle forces growth. It stretches capacity. It exposes weaknesses that must be strengthened. New oil changes how you respond to adversity. Where you once reacted emotionally, you now respond strategically. Where you once felt overwhelmed, you now sense empowerment. The anointing equips you to handle pressure without collapsing under it. It gives you the ability to discern what is a distraction and what is an assignment. It sharpens your awareness so that you move with intentionality rather than impulse. The mantle also attracts opposition. Increased rank often provokes increased resistance. But resistance is not a sign to retreat. It is confirmation that you are carrying something valuable. Oil draws attention. Authority shifts atmospheres. When you step into a room with fresh anointing, environments adjust. Conversations shift. Energy changes. You may not always see it immediately, but there is a subtle realignment happening wherever you go. Expanded responsibility means that your influence extends beyond yourself. Your obedience affects others. Your discipline creates pathways for those who are watching you. The mantle is never selfish, it is communal. It empowers you not only to rise, but to lift. It gives you the grace to mentor, to build, to establish structures that outlast you. It calls you to think generationally rather than temporarily. There is also a refining that accompanies the mantle. Oil must be protected. It must be stewarded. Not every environment is conducive to its preservation. You will sense a heightened awareness about where you invest your energy. You will become more selective about the voices you entertain. The fresh mantle increases discernment. It alerts you when something threatens your focus or your integrity. Elevated rank brings visibility. What was once hidden may now become exposed. This is not for your humiliation, but for your purification. The mantle demands authenticity. It requires that your private life aligns with your public assignment. You cannot sustain new authority with old compromises. The oil will reveal what must be surrendered. It will illuminate areas that need healing. It will challenge habits that hinder your effectiveness. The fresh mantle also brings innovation. It unlocks creativity and strategy. You will begin to see solutions where others see obstacles. Ideas will flow with greater ease. Insight will surface in unexpected moments. This is the oil working within you, activating gifts that were dormant. It is expanding your mental and spiritual capacity. It is enabling you to operate in dimensions that once felt inaccessible. With elevated rank comes a deeper sense of accountability. You become aware that your words carry weight, your tone matters, your timing matters. Your silence can be as powerful as your speech. The mantle trains you in restraint. It teaches you that authority is not loud, it is assured. It does not need to dominate. It influences naturally. New oil also refreshes your passion. What once felt like obligation now feels like purpose. There is a rekindling of vision, a reawakening of commitment. You are reminded why you began. The mantle does not erase fatigue, it renews strength to move beyond it. It reminds you that your assignment is larger than temporary discomfort. Expanded responsibility may stretch your schedule, challenge your comfort, and test your endurance, but it also expands your impact. You begin to see fruit in areas that once felt barren. You witness growth where there was stagnation. The oil accelerates processes that once seemed delayed. It aligns resources with vision. It connects you with individuals who complement your assignment. Elevated rank redefines your internal dialogue. You stop questioning whether you belong and start embracing the reality that you have been chosen for this moment. Doubt loses its authority. Comparison loses its grip. You recognize that your mantle is unique. It cannot be replicated or replaced. It is tailored to your temperament, your experiences, your calling. This season requires you to walk differently, to speak differently, to think differently. The fresh mantle is not an accessory. It is an empowerment. It is a divine endorsement of your readiness. It signals that you have been found faithful in preparation and are now entrusted with execution. The oil on your life is not accidental. It is intentional. It is strategic. It is timely. God is releasing new oil, expanded responsibility, elevated rank. The mantle is falling, and with it comes a shift in identity, in influence, in expectation. You are being invited to step fully into the weight of what you carry, to embrace the stretch, to steward the authority, to honor the oil that has been poured out for this season. You are shifting from survival to dominion, from petitioning to legislating outcomes. There is a profound difference between surviving a season and governing within it. Survival is reactive. Dominion is intentional. Survival waits for circumstances to change. Dominion changes circumstances through aligned authority. For too long, you may have operated in preservation mode, protecting your peace, guarding your resources, navigating obstacles just to make it through. But this season is not about barely making it. It is about taking ownership of the territory assigned to you. Survival mentality speaks the language of limitation. It calculates risk through fear. It minimizes vision to avoid disappointment. It negotiates with doubt and calls it wisdom. Dominion mentality, however, speaks with clarity and conviction. It understands identity. It recognizes authorization. It does not deny the presence of challenges, but it refuses to bow to them. When you shift into dominion, you stop asking whether you will endure and start declaring how you will advance. Petitioning is necessary in certain seasons. There are moments when you cry out, when you seek direction, when you request intervention. But there comes a time when your posture in prayer evolves. You no longer approach from a place of uncertainty, you approach from established relationship. Legislating outcomes is not arrogance, it is alignment with divine will. It is the confidence that what heaven has already purposed can be declared through your obedience and faith. To legislate spiritually means to speak with authority grounded in revelation. It means your words are not casual, they are deliberate. You understand that language shapes atmosphere. You recognize that declarations carry creative power. When you were surviving, your words may have been filled with anxiety and reaction. But in dominion, your words become strategic instruments. You speak life intentionally. You decree alignment intentionally. You refuse to rehearse defeat. This shift requires internal renewal. You cannot operate in dominion with a survival mindset. The patterns of thinking that protected you in crisis must be surrendered when stepping into governance. Survival taught you how to endure storms. Dominion teaches you how to command them. Survival taught you how to conserve strength. Dominion teaches you how to release power. There is a maturation happening within you, a strengthening of perspective that changes how you interpret resistance. Dominion does not mean absence of opposition. It means authority in the presence of it. It means you no longer feel intimidated by complexity. You no longer shrink when faced with large assignments. Instead, you assess with wisdom and move with confidence. There is a steadiness in your spirit, a clarity in your decisions, a refusal to be emotionally hijacked by every unexpected development. When you legislate outcomes, you align your declarations with purpose rather than preference. You do not demand what feeds ego. You declare what fulfills assignment. This requires discernment. It requires sensitivity to divine timing. It requires the humility to seek understanding before speaking. Dominion is disciplined. It is measured. It is intentional. You are no longer begging for open doors. You are recognizing the keys already placed in your hands. Authority shifts your awareness. You begin to see opportunity where you once saw obstruction. You perceive strategy where you once saw confusion. You move with precision rather than panic. Even in moments of uncertainty, there is an underlying assurance that you are not powerless. This shift also transforms how you handle conflict. Survival mode often responds defensively. It interprets correction as rejection and opposition as threat. Dominion mode evaluates conflict strategically. It discerns what requires response and what requires restraint. It understands that not every challenge deserves energy. Some battles are distractions designed to drain focus. Authority empowers you to conserve strength for assignments that matter. Legislating outcomes involves clarity of vision. You cannot declare effectively what you have not defined. Dominion demands intentional direction. It calls you to articulate goals, establish boundaries, and commit to disciplined action. You become less reactive and more proactive. You plan with purpose. You execute with confidence. You adjust with wisdom rather than frustration. There is also emotional maturity embedded in this shift. Survival often amplifies fear and insecurity. Dominion stabilizes emotion. It grounds you in identity rather than circumstance. You are less moved by applause and less shaken by criticism. Your confidence is rooted in calling, not comparison. You understand that authority is not validated by noise but by fruit. From petitioning to legislating means your prayers sound different. They carry assurance. They reflect expectation. You no longer plead as though uncertain of outcome. You declare in alignment with promises already revealed. There is boldness in your voice, not aggression, but conviction. You are aware that your partnership with heaven carries influence. This shift also redefines responsibility. Dominion is not domination. It is stewardship. It requires accountability. It challenges you to manage resources wisely, to lead with integrity, to correct with compassion, to build structures that sustain growth. Authority without responsibility becomes reckless, but authority with discipline becomes transformative. As you step into dominion, your tolerance for mediocrity decreases. You no longer accept cycles that diminish your potential. You confront patterns that hinder progress. You establish standards that reflect vision. This is not perfectionism, it is intentional excellence. You recognize that what you permit becomes precedent. What you allow becomes culture. And in Dominion, you shape culture rather than conform to it. Legislating outcomes also involves patience. Authority understands process. It does not rush development. It does not abandon vision at the first sign of delay. It remains consistent. It trusts that seeds planted with intention will produce harvest in due season. Dominion balances urgency with endurance. It moves decisively but waits wisely. The shift from survival to dominion is both internal and external. Internally, you experience strengthened confidence, sharpened discernment, and renewed courage. Externally, you begin to see alignment, opportunities emerging, relationships connecting, strategies unfolding. What once felt chaotic begins to organize. What once felt stagnant begins to move. You are not merely existing in this season. You are governing within it. You are not reacting to life. You are shaping it through disciplined obedience and intentional declaration. You are stepping out of preservation mode and into purposeful leadership. The language of limitation is being replaced with the language of authority. The posture of desperation is being replaced with the posture of confidence. You are shifting from survival to dominion, from petitioning to legislating outcomes, from reacting emotionally to responding strategically, from waiting passively to moving intentionally, from questioning your authority to exercising it with wisdom and clarity. Old limitations are breaking. Clarity, strategy, and bold execution are being imparted. There are seasons when you feel confined by invisible boundaries, mental ceilings, emotional barriers, environmental restrictions that seem immovable. You may not always see the walls, but you feel them in hesitation, in overthinking, in the quiet doubt that whispers you should stay small. This season marks the fracture of those limitations. What once restricted your vision is cracking under the weight of revelation. What once intimidated your progress is losing its authority over your movement. Limitations often begin in the mind before they manifest in reality. They are shaped by past experiences, disappointments, failures, and the words spoken over you in moments of vulnerability. Over time, those narratives become internal agreements. You start believing you can only go so far, build so much, achieve within certain boundaries. But when God releases clarity, those internal agreements are exposed for what they are: outdated scripts that no longer align with your calling. Clarity dismantles confusion. It silences distorted perception. It reorganizes your thinking around truth rather than fear. As old limitations break, there is a sharpening of focus. Distractions that once seemed urgent lose their power. You begin to see what truly matters. Your priorities rearrange themselves. Energy that was once scattered becomes concentrated. Clarity is not merely about knowing what to do. It is about knowing what not to entertain. It is the discipline of eliminating noise so that direction becomes unmistakable. When clarity is imparted, indecision decreases. You move with confidence because you are no longer navigating in fog. Strategy accompanies clarity. Vision without strategy remains aspiration. Strategy transforms intention into execution. It provides structure to inspiration. In this season, you are not only receiving ideas, you are receiving blueprints. There is a divine ordering taking place in your thought process. Steps that once felt overwhelming are being broken down into manageable actions. Complexity is being simplified. Where there was chaos, there is now coordination. Strategy requires patience and observation. It calls you to assess timing, resources, and relationships. You begin to discern which connections are aligned with your future and which were only aligned with your past. You evaluate opportunities not through excitement alone, but through wisdom. The breaking of limitations includes breaking impulsive patterns. You no longer rush into decisions out of fear of missing out. Instead, you move deliberately, understanding that precision often produces greater impact than speed. Bold execution is the evidence that clarity and strategy have taken root. Many receive vision. Many receive plans. But bold execution distinguishes those who act from those who only intend. Execution requires courage. It demands stepping forward even when conditions are not perfect. It challenges you to trust preparation more than you trust comfort. When limitations break, hesitation loses its grip. You stop waiting for unanimous approval. You stop postponing movement because of imagined obstacles. Boldness is not recklessness. It is informed confidence. It is action rooted in discernment. When you execute boldly, you are not ignoring risk. You are refusing to be paralyzed by it. You understand that growth requires movement. You recognize that refinement often happens through engagement, not avoidance. Execution turns potential into progress. It transforms possibility into reality. As old limitations crumble, your language changes. You stop saying, "I can't," and start asking, "How can I?" You shift from focusing on obstacles to identifying solutions. Your conversations reflect vision rather than doubt. This shift in language influences your environment. Others begin to perceive your confidence. Doors that once seemed closed may begin to open, not because circumstances changed first, but because you changed. Clarity also strengthens boundaries. When you know your assignment, you guard it. You become selective with your time. You protect your mental space. You understand that every yes has a cost. Limitations are not only external barriers. Sometimes they are the result of overcommitment and misalignment. With clarity, you simplify, you streamline, you align your schedule with your purpose. Strategy introduces discipline. It reminds you that sustainable success is rarely accidental. It is built through consistent action. You develop habits that support your vision. You establish routines that enhance productivity. You monitor progress and adjust when necessary. Strategy prevents burnout because it incorporates pacing. It acknowledges capacity while stretching it. Bold execution requires resilience. Not every action will produce immediate results. Not every initiative will be applauded. But when limitations have been broken internally, external resistance does not derail you. You evaluate feedback constructively. You refine methods without abandoning mission. You remain committed to growth even when outcomes take time to manifest. There's also a creative awakening in this season. Clarity unlocks innovation. When mental clutter is removed, ideas flow freely. You begin to approach challenges with fresh perspective. Problems become opportunities for ingenuity. Strategy helps you test ideas systematically. Execution brings those ideas to life. This cycle of clarity, strategy, and action creates momentum. Old limitations breaking means comparison loses influence. You stop measuring your journey against others. You focus on your lane. You invest in your development. You understand that your timing is unique. Strategy becomes personalized. Execution becomes authentic. You no longer imitate. You innovate. Clarity enhances emotional stability. You are less reactive. You understand context. You process situations thoughtfully rather than impulsively. This stability strengthens relationships. It improves leadership. It fosters trust. People respond to consistency. They respect decisiveness rooted in wisdom. Strategy also includes contingency. You learn to anticipate challenges. You prepare for obstacles without fearing them. You build flexibility into your plans. This adaptability ensures that setbacks do not become stopping points. Instead, they become recalibration moments. Bold execution attracts opportunity. Movement generates visibility. Action signals readiness. When you demonstrate initiative, resources align. Partnerships form. Momentum builds. You begin to see evidence that breaking limitations was necessary for expansion. This season is not about waiting for perfect alignment of circumstances. It is about recognizing that alignment has already begun within you. Clarity has illuminated direction. Strategy has outlined steps. Boldness is propelling you forward. The barriers that once felt permanent are proving temporary. The ceilings that once felt fixed are revealing cracks. Old limitations are breaking. Clarity is sharpening your vision. Strategy is organizing your approach. Bold execution is transforming your intention into measurable progress. You are thinking differently, planning differently, acting differently, moving with confidence rather than caution alone. Stepping forward with conviction rather than hesitation. March will align with your faith, obedience, and prophetic declarations. This month will not be shaped merely by external events or unpredictable circumstances. It will respond to the posture you carry into it. Faith is not passive optimism. It is active expectation. It is the unwavering confidence that what has been spoken in alignment with divine will has the power to manifest in tangible ways. When you step into March with faith, you are not hoping for a good month. You are positioning yourself to participate in shaping it. Faith alters perception. It changes how you interpret delays, how you respond to resistance, how you process uncertainty. Without faith, obstacles appear final. With faith, obstacles become temporary intersections. Faith does not deny reality, it reframes it. It sees beyond immediate conditions and anchors itself in promised outcomes. When March encounters your faith, it encounters resilience, it encounters persistence, it encounters a refusal to surrender vision because of temporary discomfort. Obedience is the structure that supports faith. Faith believes, obedience acts. It is possible to declare boldly yet hesitate in action, but alignment requires movement. Obedience means following instruction even when it challenges comfort. It means adjusting plans when direction shifts. It means trusting wisdom over impulse. When you walk in obedience, you create pathways for fulfillment. You align your steps with what you have declared. March will respond to your obedience because obedience cultivates order. Disorder often delays manifestation. When your actions align with purpose, progress accelerates. Small decisions compound into significant outcomes, choosing discipline over distraction, choosing integrity over convenience, choosing patience over pressure. These choices may seem minor in the moment, but they create a rhythm of alignment that positions you for increase. Prophetic declarations are not emotional affirmations. They are intentional alignments between speech and revelation. Words shape internal belief systems and external environments. When you declare in alignment with divine intention, you reinforce your faith. You remind yourself of truth. You counter narratives that attempt to undermine confidence. Declarations become anchors in moments of doubt. They stabilize your perspective when circumstances fluctuate. The power of declaration is not in volume, but in conviction. It is not about repeating phrases mechanically. It is about speaking from a place of understanding. When your declarations are rooted in faith and supported by obedience, they carry weight. They influence your decisions. They influence your focus. They influence how you engage opportunities. March responds to consistency. It aligns with steady belief and disciplined action. Alignment is not accidental. It is cultivated daily. Each morning presents an opportunity to reinforce faith. Each decision presents an opportunity to practice obedience. Each conversation presents an opportunity to declare life rather than limitation. The cumulative effect of these moments shapes the atmosphere around you. It establishes momentum. It reinforces direction. There may be moments in March that test your faith, unexpected developments, delays that challenge patience, conversations that stretch confidence. In those moments, alignment becomes essential. Rather than retreating into doubt, you return to declaration. Rather than abandoning obedience, you recommit to discipline. Faith is strengthened through endurance. Obedience is refined through repetition. March aligning with your faith does not eliminate challenge. It transforms your response to it. Instead of reacting with fear, you respond with strategy. Instead of succumbing to frustration, you maintain focus. Faith gives you perspective beyond the immediate. It reminds you that progress is often incremental before it becomes visible. Obedience also requires humility. It involves listening. It involves adjusting. It involves acknowledging when correction is necessary. Alignment sometimes means releasing what once seemed promising because it no longer serves purpose. It may involve stepping into unfamiliar territory because growth demands expansion. Obedience positions you where faith can flourish. Declarations establish expectation. Expectation influences behavior. When you expect progress, you prepare for it. When you expect opportunity, you remain alert. When you expect alignment, you act with readiness. March responds to readiness. It aligns with those who anticipate growth and prepare accordingly. Faith without action remains potential. Action without faith becomes routine. Declaration without obedience becomes empty repetition. But when faith, obedience, and declaration operate together, there is synergy. They reinforce one another. They create momentum that extends beyond isolated moments. Alignment also requires consistency. One declaration does not define the month. One act of obedience does not secure sustained progress. It is the repetition of aligned choices that builds trajectory. Each aligned decision compounds over time. Each disciplined action reinforces direction. There will be opportunities in March to compromise alignment, invitations to revert to old patterns, temptations to respond emotionally rather than intentionally. In those moments, remember that alignment is strength. Faith steadies you. Obedience anchors you. Declaration refocuses you. March is not neutral territory. It is responsive terrain. It reacts to your posture. When you walk with confidence, doors appear differently. When you speak with clarity, conversations shift. When you act with discipline, outcomes adjust. Alignment transforms ordinary days into strategic steps. Your faith sets the tone. Your obedience establishes the rhythm. Your declarations reinforce the direction. Together, they create an environment conducive to progress. They position you not as a passive observer of the month, but as an active participant in its unfolding. As you move through March, guard your faith. Protect it from cynicism. Nurture it through reflection. Strengthen it through gratitude. Maintain obedience even when results are not immediate. Continue declaring truth even when circumstances appear contrary. Alignment is often tested before it is rewarded. March will align with your faith, obedience, and prophetic declarations. It will reflect the posture you maintain. It will respond to the consistency you practice. It will unfold in rhythm with the intentional choices you make daily. Your belief, your discipline, your words shaping atmosphere, reinforcing direction, establishing momentum, creating pathways for manifestation.